Sammy Schulman was a family man, a bit of a character, and a world-class news photographer. One of Schulman's photos is in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art. He was said to be President Roosevelt's favorite photographer and was a personal friend of the President and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. In fact, it was a quote from FDR that would later become the title of Schulman's autobiography. The following is an account of the coronation of Pope Pius XII from the perspective of the only non-Vatican photographer granted access to the coronation. More than 80 years later, Sammy's son-in-law, Howard Schulman, shares his father-in-law's words and photographs, which provide a one-of-a-kind first-person account of this historic event.
Today, February 10th, 1939, Pope Pius XI has died. I was still reading Cecil Brown's story of the Pope's death when the phone rang. "Is your passport ready?" the assignment editor at International News Photos barked after I said hello. "Sure. You leave on the Rex tomorrow to cover the coronation of the new Pope. Maybe you can even make the funeral of Pope Pius XI. That's a great assignment for a rabbi's son," I said. I had been itching for action for a long time, and the Vatican story was an assignment after my own heart. The Rex had an all-star cast, including Dennis Cardinal Doherty of Philadelphia, George Cardinal Mendelin of Chicago, Roy Howard, Frank Gervasi, and Benjamin Gigli of the Metropolitan Opera. I attended the solemn Mass for Pope Pius XI, and I've never known anything more moving than that Mass on the Rex. Both cardinals officiated, and Gigli sang the Ave Maria as only he can sing it. Monsignor Pucci was in charge of press relations at the Vatican. Pooch, as everybody called him, gave me the usual credentials, but INS had other plans. Mike Shinigo in Rome at the time found me and said, "Sammy, here it is. It's the only one that has been issued," and he handed me a parchment invitation to be the representative of the American Picture Press at the coronation ceremonies inside of St. Peter's. The election of a pope packs more suspense and more tradition than any other election in the world. The cardinals, there were 62 of them this time, are virtually prisoners in little rooms opening off the Sistine Chapel where the voting is done. INS made elaborate preparations to get the story of the election ahead of the other news services. I had a scheme or two cooking too. We took over an old ruined monastery across St. Peter's Square and set up a headquarters. A telescope was focused on the chimney over the Sistine Chapel to help to determine whether the smoke came out black or white. At 5:30 p.m. that afternoon of March 2nd, the smoke suddenly rose up white and clear, and a thunderous cheer shook the ground of the ancient place. The crowning of Pope Pius XII took place 10 days later. I don't know how many of you have ever gotten up at 4:30 in the morning and put on full evening dress, but that's what my invitation to the coronation called for. I had to be inside of St. Peter's by 7 a.m., though the actual ceremonies were not to begin until 9. We clopped through the Roman dawn to the barrier that had been erected around a half a mile from the Vatican. No vehicles could go beyond that. The unbelievable pageantry began promptly at 9 o'clock. Down the great stairway came the vanguard of an impeccably colorful procession. There were richly robed priests of all colors and nationalities, choir boys and bearded missionaries in sandals walking thoughtfully next to highly gowned cardinals. And finally, Pius XII. There were 40,000 invited guests and witnesses spread throughout vast St. Peter's. The Pope made tiny signs of the cross with his right hand, on which he wore the fisherman's ring. Once he was seated on the first throne, the bishops, priests, and attendants knelt before him and kissed his foot. I didn't mean to do it, but I became a part of the procession to the next throne. When the procession to the throne of St. Peter started through the huge basilica, I got ahead of it and climbed on a balcony to command a view of the venerable throne. It was another world. The Pope was carried out on the balcony in about half an hour, and at the sight of him, the greatest cheer I ever heard went up from 300,000 who filled the square. Behind the Pope's throne on the balcony were hung silver lame draperies that made a good picture background. The light was wonderful. From the bottom of the balcony hung a rich tapestry in red and white. 2 cardinals in crimson and white robes stood at the Pope's side, and over his head waved 2 of the ostrich feather fans. Pius XII then gave his traditional apostolic benediction, Urbi et Orbi, to the city and the world. The Pope came down off his throne now and walked to the edge of the balcony. He made many signs of the cross in the air above him, and when he had finished, there were many more cheers. That afternoon, I headed for London. There was a war coming.